Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is being recorded today. Let's start with our pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We don't have to see actually son who where it was. Roll call, please.
Craig Berry.
Here.
Jim Stearns,
Here.
John Ellis.
Here.
Randy Court
Here.
and John Foster.
Here. Okay, today's workshop is to review the organizational review that we had completed a while back ago, and also the organizational projects for fiscal year 25. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to the chief to let him kind of go through the items on the organizational projects, and then we can move into the study itself, if that works, chief.
Okay. I'm referring to this page that you have that's separate from the organizational assessment report. This is bullet points that will get us started. So I created this, I guess for a board meeting, but it brought out the major points in the organizational review that we needed to address and then document its completion. So going down the left side, we did a board policies review. We did a chief's position description. We reviewed the volunteer program, the student program, the lieutenant position and the single role position. Staff retention is ongoing. I would say that there was pay raises associated with that. Policy review is also ongoing and I think going well. Our mission statement was reviewed and not changed, but entered into our current strategic plan. And we did update our strategic plan, I'll say last year. On operations practices between the chief and the captains is ongoing. Standard of cover has been updated. We did create a 5-year financial plan recently. We created an ending fund balance policy some time ago. The safety audit, there's 3 parts to that. We did 2 of them. The third one was scheduled to come out and has been given Cameron some runaround. So I don't know if the third part of that is actually going to occur. In looking back in this document, the thing that stuck out at me was the wrath. Cameron, I just started and I'm going down that this page. You really have.
Okay. I would apologize for being late, but I can't remember the last time I saw a fire, so.
The thing that stuck out was review of the harassment policy. We have not done that. We are really good at reviewing policies right now. So we will just move that to the front.
In regards to our policies and procedures and everything, where are we with, because I know when we've had discussions that we had a policy manual here, we had a policy manual there. How are we with combining them and bringing them into line with the standards of the industry of having one policy?
Yeah, so we switched over to Lexipol quite some time ago. The last thing we did was we have 175 Lexipol policies. We narrowed that down, removed all the policies that are duplicated in another document. So get that down to, I would even mind in the future removing some more policies and just getting it down to a more manageable number. But this is a really good start. In addition to that, we review 1 or 2 policies per month in conjunction with the safety committee meeting, and that's going well. And we have an archive folder for old policies, and we've removed binders off the shelves. And so we still have work to do, but I feel like we've made substantial progress on it.
Any comments on the organizational projects fiscal year 25 by anybody? And this is an open discussion workshop, so this is where our discussion begins. So are there any comments?
Yeah, so there's just a couple. with the, I don't recall who were the representatives from the union, if anybody remembers, for the volunteer and student program reviews.
Don't recall who was in with that unless that discussion was when we were in negotiations and it came up in discussion at that time. I don't remember a actual meeting.
Yeah, it was on the paper.
We brought that up as
Yeah.
the,
That's it. It does mention the union.
I remember the actual meeting they, we was in the conference.
okay.
We couldn't recall getting feedback from it, so we're just making sure that we were closing the loop with the appropriate personnel if there was union representation there.
You know, based on this, I wouldn't have done it without union representation. And I'm sorry, I can't remember who was in there.
No worries.
Oh, it was Andrew DeCourt.
And for both,
Yes.
and then we see that you guys completed the lieutenant position single role review. Do you guys recall what the outcome of that review was?
That really, so the lieutenant position that was handled in contract negotiations. And we didn't do anything other than what came out of contract negotiations.
So it's just specific to the contract negotiation. There was nothing else came to that.
That's correct.
Okay. And then staff retention, I guess we'll cover the rest that I have to do. You have anything, Diane or Jared?
I mean, unless you want me to do an opening statement, that kind of refers to everything. Why we sent the letter and everything.
Yeah, you really just say. So I just have one question. I was going to save until the end, but I'll just pose it now so we can kind of chew on it and think about it as we go through this. Just is the board open to or willing to have either another review or at a minimum some sort of follow-up? Like I think we did an anonymous questionnaire that prompted all this, something similar just to get the broader. Yes, that one. Is the board open or willing to have either another review or a similar questionnaire sent out to capture all employees' thoughts on the changes, just to evaluate progress since that initial review? I was going to save that till the end, but I guess we're going through this. Maybe that would kind of prompt us to think if it is worthwhile doing that or not.
Was that the one SDAO was involved in?
Yeah.
They sent some people down to interview everybody personally.
Yeah.
Is that what we're thinking? I'm
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
yes, sir. So, and the SDAO was prompted, if I recall correctly, because the union and I think it was admin agreed to send out or jointly worked on an anonymous questionnaire, like a climate survey, a command climate survey or something similar to that, that went out. And then there were some questions. I think Craig has
Yeah, I have the whole thing here.
has the whole packet there. And I think just some of the stuff that came out of that is what prompted that wholesome review from SDAO to come to fruition.
My opinion on that is that the review was very beneficial. It brought up a lot of stuff, but it's very time consuming for staff. It's expensive to do it. And I don't feel the need to repeat what we just did. On the other hand, if there's elements of the review that you feel have not been done, then let's focus on that instead of just doing it over again. And then also on the survey, I think if you wanted to do another survey, that would be appropriate.
Yeah, and again, I just kind of dropped that at the start. That way, as we're going through and everybody has comments or questions or whatever that come up, we can just kind of have that in the back of our mind, and then we can revisit it again at the end and see what the more appropriate path or route would be for.
I wouldn't mind the questionnaire part of it. I thought that the personnel they sent down here for the interviews was a little bit intrusive and a little bit unnecessary. I didn't feel that was very helpful in my opinion, but a survey is fine.
I think we have a boilerplate that we can kind of follow that was created. And from that, I would agree with everybody, a survey, and that's communications both ways. And I think that would be appropriate. to checks and balance.
Comment on-
So if I remember correctly, the thing that generated this whole review was a complaint that was never substantiated. And their response to how to correct the complaint was to initiate a very aggressive PEI program. And I'm wondering, that was the whole catalyst of doing it. I mean, it was good. They come down. It's always nice to have somebody come in and, why are you doing that? And you don't really realize you're doing that because you've been doing the same thing for years. And I thought it was very good, but I was just a little disappointed that they didn't come up with a more direct approach as to how that problem was solved. I guess it was never solved. So
And Mr. Foster, if I remember correctly, that
it's
was,
John, by the way.
yes, sir, John, that was one in the, I don't know if you have the raw data packet with all the written responses that came with it. That was.
That's a nice try.
That was one, if I remember correctly, that was one comment that came from that climate survey that we got through the IPAC, IAFC. That was one comment that a member made that kind of prompted the DEI response to it. But I think there was a lot of other comments and stuff as well.
Yeah, I can recall that. I thought, just, it wasn't as glowing as we thought. And so that's the reason I thought
Yeah.
we should support a
Yeah, I think
organizational.
the whole process was good and we did a lot of good things. But I was just a little disappointed that we never did get an answer on that.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
just,
and I will add to that's not the intent of the organizational review. It's possible that the solution didn't match.
Oh, yeah.
Problems exactly. We got elements out of that organizational review that were beneficial. The complaint was, mentioned, and to this day, I don't know what the complaint was. If somebody wants to enlighten me, please do, but I didn't. When this first came out, I checked around, I couldn't find out what the complaint was. And I guess I'll read it back.
So I think we're at a point right now where we need to look forward and not look backwards. We did have the study. We know, or possibly know what originated and everything. But where we're at today is to look at where we're at from the study. And I think that it's well warranted that we do a survey for checks and balances, but I don't think it would warrant having another outside party come in.
No, I'm not asking. I was just curious if there was or if there is going to be an outcome to that. That was one of the items. I'm not interested in going back and stir that pot. So
Right.
Well, and in the talk and discussion of going back, in 25 years prior to that, I don't ever recall having that kind of a issue come up where we had to address it in a real official format. So I mean, that's just on a historical basis. So, but I'm not opposed to some kind of a questionnaire or something to do.
So we've gone through the organizational projects and the chiefs outlined those. The report itself is broken down into governance, staffing and organization design, administration, standard to cover, financial elements, training and safety programs. A lot of things that the chief has updated us on and everything are captured there. What I would suggest is each one of those sections had a recommendation block after it. And we just have a discussion on those recommendation blocks. Now, there's a possibility that we can get into a lengthy discussion about things. I would suggest that we maybe limit a time frame on tonight's workshop. And if we need to discuss it further, we can always schedule another workshop. And that other workshop might be appropriate, like May or June, which would give the chief and staff an opportunity to send out a survey. And then that survey can be discussed at that time also. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that.
Can we make decisions in this meeting or is this just learning?
This is a workshop.
It's a
This is discussions and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
We can't take board action,
Yeah, but we can,
but we can discuss things.
sure, absolutely.
Yes. So With that, before we get into this, is there any discussion that any board member would like to have? Okay. Good with this approach, chief? Okay. All right, we'll move on. The first section was the governance section. And in that section on the recommendations, does everybody have that in front of them? Okay. The first bullet point was to continue to set goals and objectives for the fire chief for the upcoming year, monitor progress, status throughout the year. And I know that that is and has occurred. Then the next one is the fire chief should set annual goals and objectives for staff. That chief. Next one is review board policies, and that goes on, but that is in the process of being completed and updated and everything. We completed the updating the board policies. And specifically, this is in regards to complaints and timeframes and everything. And if I recall right, we updated our policy from the SBAO format to meet timelines and everything requirements by Oregon law, I think. That sound familiar to everybody?
I'm not gonna commit to that. I need to look into that.
We need to check that, double check that one. Okay, so we'll follow up on that one. And then review and update fire chief's job description, and that was completed. We started with Jim Stearns.
And the annual goals, that's that 3-year, 5-year strategic plan that gets put out.
Okay, the next section was staffing and organizational design. First recommendation was actively advertise the student volunteer positions and evaluate the volunteer program to ascertain if the district wants to continue the program. That was reviewed, and from what I understand, that is something that we are continuing.
We decided to move forward with the student program, but not the volunteer program.
Wasn't there discussion with moving forward with the volunteer program for the tender operator or so?
Yeah, we discussed that, and that's kind of on hold right now because after learning the requirements of a tender operator, you're right back at firefighter one.
Have the requirements been changing, like from the state or somebody?
No, the requirement didn't change. We was hoping that we could just teach somebody to drive a tender and just leave it at that, but it's turning out that they have to have all kinds of qualifications that they may as well be a firefighter one. They still have to have the training for the year.
Not like in the old days.
Yeah, thank you. So there was discussion about the volunteer program. And so is that on hold too, Chief?
Yeah, we decided to move forward with students, but not just firefighter. Do have an active student.
Okay, the next one was evaluate the effectiveness of the lieutenant position versus establishing AIC standards for firefighters. Which we talked about that, Chief.
So they mentioned this specifically in this review, and they said normally when you promote somebody when you promote an officer or establish an officer position, it's it's for a span of control problem. And it didn't appear to them that this was the case, and I agree that that's not the case there. I think the union would like to put a lieutenant on every shift. I don't agree with that. I believe that is top heavy. Too many officers for the amount of troops that we have. And so it was decided in the negotiations that we would promote one, and that would be a float. If you guys want to comment, go ahead.
Well, again, that kind of answers the question I have is if the district had a plan to fully implement approved staffing models and positions before evaluating their effectiveness. And again, from a line personnel standpoint, today would be the AIC if Jared wasn't here. Jared is here. I understand that Jared is in charge, so he is the leader for the day. If Jared was not here, I would be filling that position. And I think everybody understands that. I don't fully understand how we can, truly evaluate the effectiveness of a position if we only staff it 1/3 of the way and we don't staff all available positions. And that's the same argument I would have for the single roles. Get to that.
So your position would be that I hire two more single roles and I promote 2 people to lieutenant?
That would be the union's hope, yes, before we could truly evaluate the effectiveness of either position. I mean, when we look at the lieutenant's position now, our one lieutenant is he's a devout LDS, and he gets floated to a lot of Sundays because one of our captains is a pastor, so he vacations that day off so that he can go preach at his church. And now that member is not getting, a wholesome, go with his crew. He's not getting evaluated in that kind of leadership position by his captain. And on the reverse side of it, you have an AIC assigned to every shift. But with that AIC and that captain being gone, that's that kind of opportunity for that person to step up and fill that leadership role and start to develop their leadership style, their leadership ability to learn what they can and can't do, and kind of get their feet wet a little bit on those off days when the captain's not there. And even when it comes to bidding our schedules and stuff in July, if Gablik takes a day off on my shift, I cannot take that day off unless we know that a float's going to happen. So if we're limiting vacation days and everything based on that AIC captain structure already, why don't we fully fulfill it so that every shift has their lieutenant? It's a clear cut chain of command on every shift. And again, everybody understands that if Jared's here today, I'm in charge, and he's in charge. And if he wasn't here today, I would be filling that role. If we needed to buy 2 helmets to, Jared's here, I wear a yellow helmet. Jared's not here, I wear a red helmet to delineate.
It was my understanding that one of the reasons for the lieutenant position was so that lieutenant theoretically was a floater that could move to cover behind captains when they were absent.
Not originally. So historically, the lieutenant's position was a negotiated item in one of the previous negotiation periods. And it was brought about as a way to increase retention so that members of the department had a promotion process. We had a way to advance. We had a way to, assess future leaders and build in a development process. In that, it was heavily discussed by the union and in bargaining notes that we were going to do 3 lieutenants. And that plan ended up changing. And so now we have 1 lieutenant, and then during a later negotiation bargaining period, we changed the float language to better fit what we had changed.
To better fit the staffing model that was being effectuated.
Yes. So we never effectively fully implemented the lieutenant plan from the beginning.
I don't recall, I was in that bargaining session. I don't recall the part about the three lieutenants. I recall bargaining and creating that position with some pushback from some of the other board people, but I don't specifically recall that. In my mind, it was to be a position that allowed someone who's really aggressively wanting to move up to a captain's position to move into that position with some other testing or training, and then be readily available to move up when, a captain spot was available.
Yeah. I'm going to echo what you said. I was in the latter bargaining session. That's how I also viewed it. It was great to have because it allowed a pathway for people who are very, very career minded, but we were so top heavy to create 3 of them with a department of this size. It seemed like it was untenable.
And I think one of the other caveats, not that that's entering into this discussion, is it was to be not a pay increase position, at least initially, because that we were real sensitive to our budgetary constraints at that time. Now that's been 10 years ago. I mean, it's been a while, so I'm a little on memory there, but anyways, I just want to throw that in.
I remember some of that, and it was presented, if I remember correctly, that was the reason it was being presented, because it wasn't gonna cost anything.
Yeah.
It was a training tool or something.
Yeah, that's kind of what
I could be,
you recall.
So, well, it sounds to me like the lieutenant wants, the union wants, 2 more lieutenants. I am completely opposed to that. That's too many officers for the size district that we have. If we was managing 20 volunteers, on fire, then I would say that that would be an appropriate, implementation of extra officers. But we're not doing that.
And if I may just touch on one point, I can't remember if it was you or Craig that said it, but that position was designed to be for that person to, someone who aggressively wanted to move into that captain's position, so that when a position became available, they would be able to step into that role. I do recall that getting brought up in the last bargaining session as kind of a point of contention the union had, because for the civil service rules and everything, we would have to maintain a list or do a testing process for that,
Sure,
which would open it up to other personnel to test.
it would, but the lieutenant would have a lot of experience. Even though we would give it
so
a
Correct. The lieutenant would have a lot of experience, but that again
Yeah.
takes me back to that lieutenant is getting floated to cover days when historically an AIC would fill that role, and Lane would be getting that experience in that seat, or I would be getting experience in that seat,
I think that
but it gets floated.
the floated turned in, that was a response to pay increase. Kind of a quid pro quo of sorts. We're willing to pay that person more, but we need some more flexibility from them.
Correct.
As I recall.
But just kind of going back to that civil service point, and it sounds like that lieutenant is automatically learned to captain seat.
I wouldn't say that, no.
I don't think it'd be automatic, but
Yeah,
I
you
just
have
thought
to,
they'd
you have
do
to
well,
interview.
kind of train.
With civil service, you have a process that you have to follow through. And in negotiations, when we had that conversation, there was questions if some person, because they're working here, they were unable to meet a qual or something that we could take into consideration for that person to be able to compete in that with everybody. But in regards for just an automatic type promotion, just based upon, well, he's a lieutenant, and that automatically goes into captain.
Okay, I was making sure I didn't misinterpret or mishear what.
Right, right. So I think we're on the same page with that.
Okay.
So we've really talked a lot about the lieutenant position. I was gonna move on to single role paramedic, if that's okay.
I think that's appropriate.
So for single role paramedics, as far as, we have 1, and I heard you say you would like to have 3. Would you be willing to give up firefighters, 2 firefighters to hire 2 single role paramedics?
I think I'm gonna stop this right now, because that is getting into a negotiating MOU discussion. And this is not the forum for that right now. I think if in the discussion, I think we can be broad in our conversation, but in the respect of actually getting down to,
I understand. Let me rephrase
Like that.
Let me rephrase that.
And if I may restate the question that I had, I just
Yes.
asked why, how can we truly evaluate the effectiveness of a position if it is not given, 100% staffing for that position and the ability to flourish on its own, versus we're looking at one person who floats around, does a wonderful job. But I don't see that we're giving it a full shake, just not fulfilling that position. That was my question, is how are we evaluating the effectiveness of a position when we have never fully staffed it? We're going a third of the way.
And if
I
we're gonna,
evaluate the effectiveness of the position, I think she's heard it. I don't need 2 more single role paramedics to evaluate. But I would say that in order to hire the 2 more, it requires extra staffing that we don't have. So it would require a reduction someplace else.
Yeah, it'd be great if there were, 40 firefighters and you could have lieutenants. 3 medics.
Budgetary constraints, all
Yeah.
this.
on the single role paramedic. We had a similar type of discussion. I think one of the, see that there's further discussion that is desired on this and everything. If the union has a suggestion or a recommendation of a solution, I think that would be appropriate to present to the chief for review. The chief is cognizant of our fiscal restraints, even though we were successful in our levies. We still have to be very prudent with what our expenses are and everything. So, I don't think we can come up with a solution tonight, but I think it's a discussion.
We're never gonna find a one size fits all solution.
Correct.
But just kind of on that note, if I remember right, that point of that single role medic was to get at least one more firefighter off so we could staff a second out box, or so it wouldn't be a single engine response to the structure fire we just had, or something like that. We wouldn't be sending a single person. So I see the benefit in that program in the ability to at least as our current staffing, 40 hours a week, getting that firefighter off during those peak hours.
How's that working?
I think it works great today. We were able to, and even if Tom and them had been out on a call, we still would have been able to send 2 personnel to the fire, which would have been ample to do what we needed to do. Or at least get a hose on,
Get a hose out, like-
water going, and run command instead of one person attempting to do it all. So I do see validity in the program as it stands. But I understand there's not a one size fits all solution to anything we're going to discuss tonight.
Right. And that kind of falls into the last bullet point, is continuing to working with labor union to implement feasible ideas, not only for increasing retention, but, and again, those conversations need to be of a positive, non challenging conversation. So I think we definitely want to continue those. Any other questions regarding this section?
I just want to make a comment on the retentions. I believe this is a large part of the reason why the union brought the SDAO review up again, after 2 years. Is because if you pay attention to this piece of paper here, this is one of the areas where it's not completed and instead ongoing. This year, we're looking at losing a total of 6 personnel before December. That's almost 50% of all of our staff. So we, as a union, feel like this is a large issue. It's part of the reason why we want to have these discussions, because, well, we've talked about retention and retention being better or retention being worse. The numbers by the end of this calendar year are going to show that we are definitely still dealing with a retention issue.
Yeah, I'd like to see an action plan on things we're going to do to increase retention. I know I've asked in the past for exit interview, summarized exit interview. I haven't seen that. I think that'd be very valuable. So we could get trends, see if there's something that we could do as a board with the chief and the rest of the organization to make this a place that people want to stay.
So I did send exit interview request to everybody who left. I got one back. It's not a public document. If you want to come into my office, I'll show it to you, but I'm not going to bring it to a board meeting.
Okay. But I'm looking more for trends than anything.
Yeah.
Because people are, if they're better money, better quality of life, not in the ambulance. That's great. I need to know that. But if it's something else, we need to get to the bottom.
Yeah, and a comment I'll make along those lines too is, it's unfortunate that we lost the people that we lost, but, going to Rogue Valley Fire Chiefs meetings every month, what you see is every small agency like ours passes their employees off to big agencies, and it's a pretty common thing. We went 3 years without losing an employee, which I'm proud of, and then we lost a group of employees at the same time, which is disappointing. But I'm competing with Grants Pass and Medford, and if there's internal issues here that we can improve things, then I'm open to suggestions. But I don't think I don't believe that the employees moving on is entirely because we're operating with a bad environment here. I'm always open to.
I don't think anybody does. I don't think anybody does. We just want to know if there's things we can do.
That hurts us a lot is a lot of firefighters don't like being on an ambulance.
Yeah.
And so that's what we are. We're an ambulance service 80% of the
I would
time.
love my ambulance service.
So that hurts us a lot too.
Comparatively, does anybody know what Ashland's turnover rate is? Since they're running a box
They
too.
just lost 4. They lost 4 in the last, can you help me with that? They lost 4 in like the last 6 months.
And a lot of them move upstate where the pay scales are bigger, Willamette Valley, Portland, north.
I don't know where they all went, but yeah, they go to Medford and Eugene, wherever they are.
So this is the things that you just touched upon, is he's receptive to receiving ideas and everything. And encourage the union to communicate with the chief on those ideas and everything. And again, we don't have a bottomless pit on the finances, but if there are other things that can come up that you think can be an asset to retention, I'd like to hear what those are.
Yeah, I anticipate something like that.
So,
in the union.
so Craig, Mike, you touched upon one thing is the exit interviews, and you'll touch base with the chief on that. And what was the other thing? An action plan for?
Yeah, just again, I think this is a bigger issue. This is probably one of the bigger issues that's left in this climate survey, organizational review
So the retention issue as a whole.
as a whole. I think my perception is it's a very expensive for the department to keep training people. That can be good for people that are working with limited shifts. We basically have pro-V firefighters constantly. Gotta be painful.
I'd like to remind the room too that the board of directors just gave the union, what, a 12% raise?
Yeah, that was it.
And that didn't appear to change that turnover.
Well, I mean, and I can speak from anecdotal evidence. I don't think it's a secret to many people in this room, but I am on a list at another department right now. I'm one of the potential losses in the future. And I got hired here knowing that this was a transporting agency and the ambulance has nothing to do with it from my perspective. The pay is great. I have nothing wrong with the pay. The benefits are great. The pay isn't it from a personal anecdotal standpoint.
And agreeing with Cameron's point of view, I tested elsewhere. I got number 2 at Ashland position. I did not look to go to Medford. I did not look to go to D3. I looked to go to another organization that also had an ambulance. Their pay is on par with us. Depending on the year, it's 50-50. At the end of the day, it's not about the pay for me. It's not about the ambulance. People who really want to be here are not going to apply here if they don't want to be on an ambulance.
As a board, there's obviously we have to work together, but we need to know that there's things we can do actionable as a board to maybe make a dent in this trend.
Any other comments on this section? Are you able to hear all this, Jim? Okay.
He's got to find a mute button.
Now I had to find the mute button, yeah. I'm sorry, what was your question?
You able to hear all this?
Yeah, I have nothing further to add to it.
Okay. All right, administration section. All policies and procedures need to be reviewed, updated. All policies need to be archived and stored in one location. That is occurring. Promote and emphasize mission, vision, and value statements in all decision-making processes. Being a cross-sectional group of district members to create a strategic plan. Review harassment policy with all personnel, determine if rumor of a complaint is fact, that should have been or fiction, and properly investigate if factual. Adopt and support a robust DEI program for the district. Ensure consistent operational practices between shifts. Any discussion on those topics?
I have a question. And I think it goes to, specifically that last one, like the consistent operational practices between the shifts and everything. Just how does the board, ensure that it receives a comprehensive and direct understanding of department culture and operations
From the chief.
from the chief? Okay. And again, I asked, the only time that most of the typical union members get any FaceTime with the board members is during those meetings or when it comes time for negotiation. I think it would be, personally, I think it would be cool if you guys, came down and saw some of the calls we ran or had a cup of coffee in the morning or, got to know the crews and at least from the board standpoint, kind of put a face and personified you and not just the person sitting across the table from the general employee who's not in that union leadership role, gets to FaceTime with you guys all the time.
I thought about doing it, but I always felt that I would be causing a problem in the work you guys are trying to do. You didn't want to be standing around talking to me.
Oh, shoot, John, I chat with you every time you come in to get a handful of paper.
Parts go down on the floor.
So it's a catch-22 though for the board. Because in our board policies, it clearly states that we have to follow a chain of command, just as everybody else in the organization has to follow a chain of command. And we as a board have been doing that, following the chain of command. And simple as that,
Right.
It would be difficult, having been a chief, to where you have your board members continually with the rank and file. And it would be a difficult thing for that chief, because when you start getting the board into the operational minutia of an organization, board members will say, well, screw it, I need to do this, I need to take action here, I need to take action there. And that kind of messes up the whole chain of command thing. However, with that, there's nothing saying that there can't be a workshop where we have a communications type of a thing that would occur.
So I know I've been on at least one observation ride when you guys transported my daughter from a car wreck to the hospital. I got to ride along that. But in lieu of us riding with you, and I'm very interested in your guys' job, I always sort of have been. Could you share some videos of what you're doing? Maybe, not along the line of the awards banquet videos, but something that's like real business, like a kind of some short shots of, here's a response to a fire, or here's a mutual aid response, or here's an ambulance trip. I mean, something like that wouldn't be a specific thing. I don't think that would bother anybody, that we would all be able to kind of review those. I would look at something like that. I mean, if that was a possibility.
No, and I only bring it up, I've heard a couple of times, people throughout this discussion we've had already, we need to have those conversations, or we need to, do that survey, or we need to do, and, have some form of conversation or some way of getting at what the line staff wants. And, workshops are great, and it's not a completely formal setting what we're doing right now, but, it's still, we're across the table from each other, and there's still kind of that for someone who hasn't sat across the table with in a negotiation and actually seen how it goes, there just kind of feels like there's a wall or something. Like there's
If
just
you guys have a
there's no
suggestion
personification.
of how something could occur where we don't impact the chain of command.
Our supervising physician, Dr. Vaughn, Alicia Vaughn, she comes down here and from time to time does a ride along, because again, she sets policy, she sets standing order and protocol.
Yep.
And she wants to see how that's being interpreted by the troops. I mean, at least from my point of view, it's a very similar thing. Use board member set policy. It's the same way with the scheduled ride along.
It is,
That get interpreted.
but the one big difference is we are a board of 5, and I think we really want to avoid even the optics of us getting involved with the organizational day to day. Boy, that'd be nice if you did this, or this and that. That would really undermines the chief. And so we have to be super careful about that. I used to be a volunteer here for 10 years, so I miss coming down and hanging out in the break room. But I can't do that now because of my responsibility as a board member. So, but if we had social events or things like that, that'd be great.
Again, it's just a random thought because, there always seems to feel from like there's tension. I mean, I've sat across the table from all of you and you guys are great guys. And I just feel like that kind of something gets lost when you're not, sitting across, talking to someone, breaking bread with them, doing that, and you kind of lose that personification and it becomes kind of a us and them setting.
And I would say, feel free to add as much detail as you want to your captain's reports, because we really do pay attention to those and review them and read through every line item. And if there's some specific things that you want us to be aware of, please put them in your reports at least. Like I say, if you had a video that there was some way to share some of your, work days and stuff, I would be more happy to review that stuff and enjoy it. It would be hard for me to probably do some ride-alongs or something, but especially now. But
Let me ask this question, and this is pulling something out of nowhere, is without creating a negotiation issue or a negative relationship issue, would there be an idea of a union report to the board?
As secretary, I don't see a problem.
Just to kind of give an update of what's going on with the union and things of that nature. But the intent would not be, oh, this is our chance to come in and read this,
Right.
read that, because we have a very specific process for that. See, we're in a catch-22 as a board. We just had to go through all of our training and everything. And they tightened the reins so tight on public officials of what we can and what we can't do, what's a public meeting, what's not a public meeting. Those are concerns to all of us. So
I like that. It's a good idea.
I think it's a great idea, personally. Yes. And I don't see any major conflicts of interest from a union standpoint. We'll do a little bit more research on it, though.
And I want to emphasize that it wouldn't be a report of hostility.
It's not going to
directed
delve
towards
into
anybody. I know you generally work that way, but I wanted to be clear from a board standpoint, it would just be a communication type thing. And on all those communications, it's very important that, if a package is being done, that the chief is in that loop and he has the obligation first off to respond to any of those.
Can you give me an example of what you would put in that report?
We had never really thought about it until this point. That would be something we would have to take before the union as a body and see what they would want to do. And
What does the board want to know?
Well, the reason I asked the question is because it initially sounds like a real good idea. And I initially went, yeah, that's okay. But then I go, what's going in the report? If you're not complaining about something, what are you going to put in the report? And I don't know the answer. I'm not saying I'm going to do it. I'm just throwing it out there.
I had never thought of that ever being a possibility until just now.
What I was thinking of is, because you're talking about communications before, like if a suggestion came up that had been vetted by the chief and everything, that suggestion could be an opportunity for it to be presented in that method, along with the chief's recommendations. No, it's just something that was just thrown out there.
It sounds like
I would encourage the chief, the union president, to discuss about it and see if there's any validity to it. It might have just, been something thrown out that won't work.
I did have a couple of ideas of stuff we could put in there. So we have a lot of people who kind of have other responsibilities. They go to a lot of other different places. People work at RCC, people, work with nonprofit organizations. So we have a lot of other people who, have lives outside of this, and that might be some things that could be brought into it. Like the girls' camp is a really great example. It is not strictly something that is department related, but at the same time, we do have members that participate in that, and it does act in a, recruitment fashion. I have met numerous community members that have gone to that girls' camp, and, they speak very highly of our personnel who are there. And so again, that might be one of those situations where, again, it's not strictly department related, district related, but also has a huge impact on things that you guys might want to know. Just
May I make a suggestion that you guys have a discussion with the chief and then kind of bring something back to see if there's some validity to it.
Absolutely.
That was kind of covering the whole admin section. If just a big, any other comments on that? Okay, the next section is,
Page 14.
yeah, what group, what was that? That was
Financial element.
the financial. Reconcile property tax revenues versus assessed valuation growth.
Did we do standard or cover?
Yes, we did. We updated the previous one.
Develop a 5-year financial plan based on realistic revenues forecasts. Develop a capital replacement plan, both apparatus, station equipment identified. And then adopt an ending fund balance policy with those recommendations. A lot of those did occur at the board level. Any comments or conversation on any of those topics? Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
so page 6, are we gonna go use this document? We can do standard.
Oh, that was on page 14.
Yeah, we didn't do standard or cover yet.
I probably discussed it, and Mike gave an update on that one. Standards are covered.
We did it there.
So the recommendations
Oh, page 8.
on page 8.
Okay, recommendations. Benchmark working fires to develop baseline response data. Develop realistic standard of cover on available response and fiscal resources. Update the district's website to reflect current minimum staffing levels. Insist apparatus response and arrival times are recorded by dispatch. Rogue River Fire Protection District should request monthly response time reports from dispatch agency. Benchmark on emergency scenes when standard of cover minimum staffing has been met, and benchmark on emergency scenes when 2 in, 2 out have been met. Consider modified scheduling for a single role medic to cover peak hour activities EMS calls. Discussion on those.
Well, we have a standard of cover document, but have we put effort into getting any granularity for how we're gonna work on some of these fires? We have. No, we talked about,
Standard of cover document, I wish I had it in front of me, but it relies heavily on mutual aid, as you might imagine. So not in front of me, I don't know. What exactly are you questioning?
well, I know we had discussions to do more planning in case of a wildland urban interface fire. And I don't think anything ever really came out of that, as opposed to relying on mutual aid. Variety of things that we talked about, having a plan. There's a variety of, there's the pots, potential operational delineations method we could use. There's a variety of things that, new science that could help us anticipate fires and minimize the loss of life. And I don't think we did much other than creating a document.
I know we had a couple meetings ago, members of the public that came in asking about evacuation routes, all kinds of plans and things like that. And there was direction to see if we could get the Director of Emergency Services to come in and give the board an update on that to address some of your things. Where are we with that, Chief?
I met with the emergency manager along with the police chief and the city administrator. And we talked a lot about evacuations, how evacuations are requested, carried out, et cetera, in the county. And it's pretty straightforward. How we request an evacuation. I don't know.
I think what the question was is when we asked to have the Director of Emergency Services here.
I can check with her and see if she will come to a board. I'd like to know what, I guess the thing that's confusing to me is the evacuation thing. Because I'm having a hard time relating to what you're telling me. All of our drainages are one way in, one way out. I cannot make that better. If you want to talk about a tsunami, I can tell you what the evacuation route is 100% of the time. You want to talk about a wildfire? I can't tell you because I don't know where the fire is going to be at.
Sure.
More the wind blowing from down.
Yeah, I think,
I don't understand. It keeps coming up over and over about this big plan of evacuations, but I just don't know how to make that plan to your satisfaction.
I think that would be the opportunity of having the emergency services coordinator here is because a lot of the, I think, questions that have come up to the chief isn't even in areas of our authority legally. They fall upon the sheriff's office or they fall upon another county entity and everything. And the Director of Emergency Services is the individual who's supposed to be the keeper of everybody's plans and who's responsible for what. And that individual could be able to articulate some of the questions that you may have, Craig, of whose responsibility, what the plan is and everything, to make it a little clearer. So.
And I'd like to ask if that meeting came about, a few more questions about how they developed the mapping with I forget the acronym, the number zones, zone X, Y, Z, or what. I'm just kind of curious about that. If that's the person that, well, I know you guys weighed in on that as well, probably when those were developed, but I'd like to know a little more about them. Yeah.
this isn't really asking for a solution. It's really going down a process where you're learning more every year. You're a little more confident. It seems like we're going to have one heck of a fire season this year. And it doesn't sound like we have a lot of tender drivers now. We've lost a tender driver. So things like that, where how are we going to be able to get water where we need it? How are we going to be able to get water out when people are coming out? How are we going to be able to get up? Things of that nature.
How many tender operators do we have now? None?
None from the volunteer side. Most of our line personnel are tender.
So this is probably a dumb question, but in the event of a fire, a fairly major fire event right here, how do we can turn down ambulance calls to keep staffing for fire? Is there like a priority thing that goes on there?
Outside of fire season, we will unstaff the engine to run a second medical call. Once we get to high fire danger, we won't do that. So if we get a medical call, the ambulance will go, the engine will go. If we get a second medical call, we won't unstaff the engine to staff the ambulance on the second one, so that ambulance would have to come from Mercy Point.
That answered my question. Thank you. I knew there was some mechanism.
Chief, one question I have is, and it was brought up here, is in working with our dispatch on tracking of calls and everything. And I know there was a little discrepancy when we were doing the levies from what we were reporting as calls from what the dispatch center was reporting on calls. And that's the first question is, can we get that resolved so we're all on the same page? My next question is, though, noticing.
You guys, if I remember right, we had that big town hall for the levy. Everybody stood up and talked, and I think you guys presented a number that was like 1,000 or 2,000 calls less than what I was able to find from the ECSO year-end review for the prior year. So I believe we were looking at 24 at that time, and the numbers that dispatch posted were like 1,000 to 2,000 calls more than the other data that we had.
So the question that I had is along those things is when we're in peak fire season and everything, and it sounds like it's a standard SOP that we run the engine along with the ambulance on calls and everything. The question I have is there a method or a screen that can basically identify the type of call that would identify maybe the necessity of not having to roll the engine?
We do that, it's called ProQ.
What's it called?
ProQA.
Okay, so are we rolling the engine on every call or are we
We
not?
roll it, everything that's not, we roll it on what priority ones and priority twos. We don't roll it on, like adding responses. So say that it's something like that.
Unless there's a specific need for the lift assist, like if patient's, 400 pounds, then we know we're gonna need the engine crew to help pick them up as well. So we do kind of do some delineation on our own as well.
One last question for me, at least on the bullet points that you're, Chief. One of them is Rogue River should request monthly response time reports from your dispatch agency. Do we get those? And okay,
We're required to report that to them.
okay, and that gets turned into Jackson County. Do we see those typically at our board level stuff? Just curious.
You see the called numbers, you don't see the response times.
Yeah.
But I do an annual report that has those response times over the year, so that document is available.
That also affects our ISO rating, I think, doesn't it? Some of those response.
ISO is for fire, the response times I'm talking about in for
Range. Okay. Thank you.
When was our last ISO? So we're coming up on one.
Theoretically.
This is the one where they'll physically come out this time or it's the one we just sent them?
No, I don't know. Sometimes I'll get them come out and sometimes they can send you a letter.
Okay. All righty. Any other questions on that section? Okay. Now, moving on to the financial section, which we already had a discussion on. So if there's any comments on that, for the entertainment?
Do we, how is your, so the roof is getting annual maintenance now. Do we feel like it's gonna last for another 20 years at this point?
Well, it's a metal roof.
Yeah.
The roof itself is in good shape. All the fasteners and flashing, rubber boots and all of that is what becomes an issue over time.
It's a painted metal, is it like, is it iron or get, rust or is it? Do you see any, was any rust noted up there?
I've never seen this.
When they went up and did the initial assessment of the roof, they said that it was in really good shape.
Yeah.
And they said that it will last for years to come,
Yeah.
They weren't concerned about a roof. Like Chief said, it's just more about the ground that's loosening and boots, but they, went around and fixed most of that. The issue is our roof is so big, that the likelihood of them missing one or two here and there and us getting little leaks, but then they cannot fix it. But
Gotcha.
they said that they were impressed with how well our roof was when they did the original assessment.
Okay, and places where it's leaked in the past, has anybody looked at the structure and make sure there's not any?
Yep.
Any dry rot or anything?
Yeah, so, when they went up and did the roof, I crawled up inside and inspected the inside, just seeing if there was any mold or anything from within, and I didn't see any of that. Mhm. And so it seemed like it was.
Okay, it's pretty hot, right? Any moles gonna die, right?
Okay, moving on to the training and safety programs. With recommendations, form a training committee to assist with the prioritization, planning, and organization of training events. Create an instructor pool. Identify high-risk, low-frequency type events and develop training scenarios that will prepare crews for those events. Conduct annual individual and company skills evaluations based on NFPA 1410. If you want to give us a quick overview of where we're at with all those?
So we have a training ship that handles training, scheduling and organizing. And we comply with the annual training requirements as required by, for both medical and fire. We do not conduct skill evaluations as such, but we do annual training, all of the requirements for, say, firefighter one, and then your medical scope of practice.
How about the high risk, low frequency event training? Has that taken place at all? Has that been identified?
I guess you'd be talking about structure fires, grass fires, water rescues. We trained at all of those.
Well, another thing that we do participate in is like the local MCI drills. We participate in those in Josephine County and Jackson County. So that would be a low frequency, high risk event, I guess you might say.
One of the questions that I have is, where are we with individual training? You know, we're going into other ICS quals, following, you know, any of those type of things. Are we doing those things for our staff?
You mean like,
As those trainings come up,
yeah,
they can apply to go outside of the district and attend the training. And then sometimes there's a task group associated with it, sometimes.
And have our staff been doing that?
so I'm taking a fire officer 2 class, next month. And I think William's taking a boss class. So there are some of us that are doing that.
At the beginning of each year, the training officer, does he sit down with the employees and develop basically a individual development plan for that employee or scope of training?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Okay,
To look at what the employees has experience with, has documented, trained as, and how they're going to get them up to a level of proficiency within the year. I think that's what he's asking.
I personally never received any such
Assessment.
assessment. I do have a question on who is our training committee?
We don't have a committee. We have a training shift. I think that, I don't know that a committee is necessary. I believe that if you wanted some specific training to be done, you could request it.
And I mean, and that kind of leads to my question then, I guess, what structures ensure training access, consistency, and timely certification for all members, both aide and student?
Say that again.
What structure or structures do we have that ensure training access, consistency, and timely certification for all members, aide and student?
I guess you follow the training schedule if there's additional training you need.
And And I won't say that. I think some artificial barriers to training have been put in place and to certifications have been put in place. I mean, Jared can speak to one with his student.
Yeah, so I did have a student that went through the Angel Boss class, went through his firefighter one task out, and then he turned in the stuff to the training officer, and then the training officer decided that he needed to task out prior to him submitting that training. And
Are you talking about engine boss or pumper operator?
pumper operator, and it was with Caleb Groom. And
We've always tasked out pumper operators internally
Right.
with the task book
And
because
just a second, just so that's internally. So we've always tasked them out internally prior to clearing them on an engine. But their task book has been submitted for them to get their firefighter or to get their pumper operator certification. They're just not allowed to function as a pumper operator within our district until they task out. That's the way that it's been
It's pay as pay. I was a
done in
pumper
the
operator.
past.
I was a pumper operator
Right.
and I never got to operate one of your engines.
Yeah.
Even though I had done so in other districts.
Yeah.
That's really painful.
But, and again, he brought up the question to me just because he is testing at other agencies and that's preventing him from, potentially getting points on job applications and stuff like that.
so my belief, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that whenever we send somebody to a pumper operator class, they get the task book.
Yep.
We task them out here on our vehicles because our vehicles are different than everybody else's vehicle.
Correct. This is a student who should never be pumping our apparatus,
Okay.
in my opinion. He's here to learn, get stuff. He can have a certification, but just not be cleared to pump on apparatus. We've also had similar issues with the, anybody wildland certified or done wildland certifications through NWCG. So you take your 130, 190, L180, and that makes you a FFT2. You open the task book that summer, typically start filling out that task book, maybe get it completed, but you do not become an FFT1 until you take the 131 course. And you cannot even open a task book until you've taken the 131 course. And we had a 2 or 3 year period where it wasn't offered or we couldn't get access to that. So we had members getting lots of experience on wildland fires, but not being able to put that towards completion of the task book because they hadn't taken that class. But NWCG specifically allows for the opening of the task book one level prior to one that you're
So did our training officer put that requirement on you or NWCG?
training officer.
So you're asking for basically parallel pathways instead of being.
So I just want to understand, and again, that's why I came back to the training committee or like who is making the decisions. There seems to be artificial barriers to
So it
access.
sounds like right now, the training captain is making all those decisions. So we maybe need to look into a training committee. I have a question, and this is a level higher than where you guys are getting down to right now. You talked about the student firefighters. My quick question is a career employee when they're off probation, is there a set number of classes or an ongoing educational program where you have an employee, and let's just say it's a 2-year employee. During those 2 years, they have to complete program A, B, C, and D. The 4-year employee would have to complete C, D, and F, whatever those courses might be.
So like a career progression or promotion plan.
Correct.
I don't believe so.
So basically,
Again,
is our training program set up right now is once you're off probation as a career employee here, if you want a course, you have to come in and ask for that course.
We are told the courses are offered, so the opportunity is there, but there's no kind of like you're alluding to, no structured plan to to progress in the career. So if I had wanted to stay a intermediate and firefighter one, and that meet the minimum qualifications for my entire career at the department, I could do.
I'm gonna date myself here, guys. Firefighter 2 is still a thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, are we doing that with our personnel?
So we've actually had a couple of issues with that. Some of the classes, again, after COVID are a little bit difficult to get our hands on. So flag would be one of the big ones, flammable liquids and gases. Okay, so that is relatively difficult to get. And it hasn't come up. Frequently checking DPSST websites, trying to coordinate with RCC, talking to some other individuals. And we just haven't been able to get those, and it's left us in a situation where some people cannot progress past that one task box. They have 99% of their book filled, they're waiting on one skill evaluation.
And is that one skilled evaluation they're waiting for, is it just to show up here geographically, or is it available in other areas geographically?
If you want to speak to it, Tom.
As far as I know, I haven't been, I've looked around for other flag classes. We talked to DPSST's Rick Cooper and haven't been able to get a flag day. I took my firefighter 2 class, it would have been last May. So we did a flag day. I did all the skills, but the instructor there said that they weren't signing anybody's task books off. I've been waiting for almost a year just to get a flag class. I think Casey Carter's been waiting for almost 3 years or something like that, just to get a flag task or flag day, so she can complete the firefighter 2 task book as well. And that's all we're waiting for certification.
There's some district 3 could help us with.
So this problem is bigger than the flag class. It comes up with engine boss. The two signatures that are really hard to get on engine boss are live fire, putting fire on the ground, and directing aircraft. And so the Rogue Valley Fire Chiefs came together along with Rita. Rita probably led it and said, we're going to create this thing called Southern Oregon Wildfire School. We're going to focus on those two things. And that went really well for, I'm going to say, 2 to 3 years, but then it started having problems, and there were multiple problems, but I think one of the biggest problems is getting enough people to sign up to take it. So like on the flag class, where was you at where they were not signing up to signatures?
When I took Rita's firefighter 2 academy, we had a full flag day, and Rick Cooper was the one that was leading it. And he said he wasn't going to sign anybody's task books off that day, which didn't quite make sense to me, because that's kind of what everybody gets hung up on. So it was just kind of silly to me to take the class, do the skill, but then I have to wait for another day for it to open up for me to be able to redo the skill again to get the task signed off. It just didn't make sense.
Okay. I understand the frustration of not being able to get a qualification because you're lacking 1 or 2 signatures. I don't know how to make it go better than that.
Is that something we can do internally? If we have.
We're accredited to teach certain classes. Flag is not one of them.
All the other agencies, like having the same problem. Surprised that somebody hasn't pulled the plug on that.
Yeah, I wonder, could the Alliance help us being that?
Well, I would probably put it on Rita, and I don't know why Rita, which is our training association. Rita was formed for the purpose of identifying these types of training deficiencies for the valley and then providing the training.
Got it. So I've never attended Rita, so I don't really know how it looks. I know that there's a handful of captains and chiefs around the area that serve on the board of Rita. I mean, how does that function? Is it a monthly meeting?
It's a monthly meeting.
Okay, and I mean, how does the agenda get set?
I don't know. But they, I think it's on the Rita website.
Okay.
I think they have a president and go with you over to the meetings.
Used to be really active, as I remember,
I don't go to the.
15 years ago.
He
Who goes to the,
A lot of.
All right, let's continue on with this thing right here. So moving on to, I guess this is going to be the safety section. Ensure all safety committee members meet the level of training outlined in statute. Ensure quarterly fixed site inspections are completed and reported. Attempt to have volunteer positions on a safety committee. We don't have any, that's okay. Post safety committee agenda ahead of time for members and coworkers to review.
So we've done I personally think, we've done a great job on, especially with, and I think it comes up in the next one, getting the reviews by OSHA, getting them to come through at least annually or semi-annually to assess us and give us that feedback that we need about what we're doing. You know, we completely changed up our quarterly inspections based on a couple of their recommendations. We would do certain areas every quarter where instead it turns out we need to do the entire footprint of our property and everything inside of it for that. So we've made those changes and it really hasn't caused any issues since we implemented that. It also brought up the exact level of training that we need. And I think we've done a great job getting all committee members up to speed on that training that we need. That specific training suite that they have through OSHA, bring in OSHA. And I think the only place that we have kind of fallen, Jenny, you post do we post it before or do we post it after? Right after. So I forgot that was in there. So that's something that we can definitely work on as a safety committee to kind of close the loop on this section. But I think we've hit everything and I think we've gone above and beyond what they've asked for in ensuring that we have a well-balanced, well-rounded safety committee as far as the personnel who sit on it, the training, and making sure that we're doing those quarterly inspections appropriately so that we don't create a possible route for fines or anything like that from them. So I think we've done a good job.
Aaron, that was a good update on that, because that pretty much hit all the bullet points for the next section. But my only question on that one is the update the respiratory protection policies, ensure appointed respiratory protection administrator completes the appropriate training.
So thank you on that one, as she pointed out, as I was walking in, going through the policy reviews, we've been hitting those as we go. And that respiratory protection and a number of them were identified through those OSHA walkthroughs that we requested, that these are actually annual items that need reviewed for as far as the policy goes. So we've identified probably 3 or 4 of those that we need to hit annually. And now we've got them updated. They're up to par and we're on a good schedule to where now we can just sit down and review them and say yes, no, make a change here and call it good. So I think moving forward, especially with all the policies, that's going to be a lot simpler than it was that first meeting or 2 that we had.
Okay, so who's responsible for safety at this department? Who's ultimately responsible?
I would be the safety officer.
Safety committee.
The safety.
Everybody on the safety committee. That is your responsibility. That is at the level of the board, to the level of the chief. You have a powerful voice, and I hope you feel empowered to use it. I just want to make that clear. And one thing that did come up, and I still see this trend. I always look at how long your minutes are. And when they did this back in 2023, it was 8 minutes. They're still very short meetings. So I wonder what can take place in 8 minutes.
I think our meetings have gone, I think our last one was 15 or 20 minutes. I don't remember the exact time. They've been going for a while, especially now that we've been getting our, doing the policy reviews and everything in there. That has got us talking a lot more. Fortunately for us, we don't have a lot of accidents. We don't have a lot of incidents and we don't have a lot of minor injuries. I think our personnel are very safe. So we don't have a lot of that to sit down and discuss cause and reaction and kind of how we could prevent this in the future type discussions. And a lot of it comes down to, like I think our last one was we're going into spring. So the temperatures are starting to change, you know, start acclimating yourself to the heat and working on that heat prevention. So we try to kind of seasonally adjust what our topics are and what we're talking about. I hope, I hope that we don't start having more accidents or incidents or injuries, and we can avoid a cause to have those longer conversations. Do you have any suggestions as to?
No, they're just some observations. I've been on many safety committees. I've led them and served for many years on them. And it just seemed like they're very short. I'm happy that, you know, for a fire department, when there's not a whole lot of injuries, but sometimes you have to be a little more proactive and think what could happen. What kind of education do we need to work with? Maybe we have some very highly trained people, maybe, but it sounds like there's a bit of turnover here. So maybe we need to focus more on other things. I'm not sure. So you have the safety meetings, and then what happens next? Other than the minutes, how are people, how is everybody else included?
As far as I'm aware, so we have, our safety committee is made up of the 3 captains, chief, our 2 office staff, and Kelsey and myself. Did I miss anybody? So those 3 captains, they sit through that safety meeting and they take all their notes and everything. Safety meeting closes, they follow up and do their captain's meeting with chief. And then following that meeting, they go back to their respective shifts. And that first day following that they're on duty, following that safety meeting, they have to sit down with their crew and discuss everything that was brought up in both the captain's meeting and the safety meeting, and just have that full conversation. So yeah, the meetings might be lasting, you know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, but that conversation is ongoing and making sure that it is getting dispersed to those personnel and those line staff.
So it's 3 captains and the chief. And who else is on there?
The 2 office staff, Jenna, myself, and our single
Role. So does that seem like it's kind of top heavy as far as
we actually
cross section of the department?
We actually addressed that in this last go around following one of our reviews. They did identify that captains would be more considered supervisors. So we added in Kelsey because she's typically here every Tuesday. So we don't have to bring her in or do the overtime thing. And as well as our office staff, that's a day that they're typically both there. And in that, I think gets a pretty well-rounded view. I'm not opposed to, also, we always invite the on-duty crew to come in. And, you know, if they have any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, or any feedback, anything that they have for it, we always elicit that if anybody sits in on the meeting.
Thanks.
I think we've got an opportunity now to go through the recommendations that have discussion on. I'd like to kind of just open up, is there just any general discussion? Where we identify some things that we're going to do and where we're going to go. Righty.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. So I just think that, you know, again, we're in a big period of retention, and I think we do a decent job at our recruitment for our personnel, and the retention is kind of where I think we need to focus. And I think that was driven, a lot of that drove both the questionnaire and the SDAO review. But in addition to that, you know, is there any workforce planning processes that we utilize to anticipate those staffing turnovers?
You kind of went where I was going to go.
Okay, because it seems like we're pushing that test.
Okay. To answer that question is, as I've been listening to a lot of the conversation, there's a common denominator that has surfaced in all of them, and that's communication. And I think we need to work upon our communication somehow. Exactly how we do that, I don't know. But we identified that, you know, the retention is an issue and everything. Training has come up as a discussion, as an issue and everything. One of the things that I think that there is probably going to be more discussion on, and that's going to be the volunteers, because I didn't know as a board member that we've completely given up on a volunteer program. And I understand now with the training ramifications, but I think we need to have discussion on that. So I know also that you're going to get together with the chief and look at the ramifications that are involved if there will be a union reporting board meetings. And I'm open to other board members for suggestions of where you think we should go with this. I'm thinking that to give everybody an opportunity is we should probably do a survey and maybe reconvene this workshop the middle or the end of May, which would give an opportunity to develop a survey. And Chief, you take lead on that one in conjunction with staff, union, whoever you feel appropriate for that survey, and then get it out to the staff.
Yeah, as far as, so the making decision aspect is kind of challenging. Do you want us to email you some suggestions for a future meeting that we could look at? Maybe a list of things that we'd like to see implemented?
Sure. That would be,
Would that probably be
Yeah.
the cleanest way to do it?
and,
Okay.
and send them to the chief, CC me on that,
Yeah.
and then those can become agenda items for the next workshop. And again, I say the middle of May, end of May is, let's do a thorough job on this. See where we can go with this. Any other comments? John, I'm going to start with you. Anything?
So I'm overeducated now.
Okay. Randy?
I think we touched on everything I had concerns or questions about.
Jim?
Actually, I've heard several things here that are of particular interest, and I think I have a couple ideas moving forward, but I would like to discuss those with you as the board president and also the fire chief before I elaborate further on those. So I think it's a healthy discussion that's taken place here, and I'm looking forward to moving on from here.
Okay.
Great. Thanks for accommodating my work schedule. Appreciate it.
All right. Gentlemen? That's a nod. You're okay. Okay.
I think we hit on everything, and yeah, we'll work with chief on the proposal or the idea for that union review or union report. It was an R word, as well as get together with chief and see what kind of survey, or does the board want to be part of the creation of that survey?
I'm good with the chief and you guys coming up with the survey. You deal with the operational issues, and that's gonna be more of a impact on the survey than I believe any of us board members come up with, unless there's board members that would like to. Okay, there you go. Okay, with that, motion to close the workshop.
Move we close the workshop.
We have a motion and we have a second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, everybody.
We'll see you down on the floor. Walking around, wandering.